The Trojan War is one of the most famous conflicts in Greek mythology, encapsulating a story of love, betrayal, and heroism. The war is said to have taken place between the Greek city-states, led by King Agamemnon of Mycenae, and the city of Troy, located in Asia Minor. The spark of the war was ignited by the abduction, or elopement, of Helen, the queen of Sparta and wife of King Menelaus, by Paris, a prince of Troy. This act of love or theft, depending on the version, led to a war that spanned a decade and became the central focus of Homer's Iliad, as well as many other Greek works. The origins of the conflict, however, are rooted in divine intrigue. At the wedding of the mortal Peleus and the sea goddess Thetis, the goddess of discord, Eris was not invited. In retaliation, Eris tossed a golden apple into the midst of the guests, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest." This sparked a dispute between three goddesses, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, each claiming the apple. To resolve the matter, Zeus appointed the Trojan prince Paris as the judge of the contest. The three goddesses each attempted to bribe Paris. Hera promised him power and dominion over Asia. Athena offered wisdom and military success, and Aphrodite promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, swayed by Aphrodite's offer, awarded her the golden apple. This decision would have profound consequences, as it earned him the enmity of Hera and Athena, and led to the abduction of Helen, the wife of Menelaus. With Aphrodite's help, Paris journeyed to Sparta, where he either seduced or abducted Helen, depending on the version of the myth. Helen willingly or unwillingly left Sparta with Paris and returned to Troy, sparking outrage in Greece. Upon discovering that his wife had been taken, Menelaus sought the aid of his brother Agamemnon, the most powerful king in Greece, to lead an expedition against Troy and retrieve Helen. This marked the formal beginning of the Trojan War. To gather the necessary forces, Agamemnon invoked the oath of Tyndareus, a vow that all of Helen's former suitors had taken before her marriage. They had sworn to protect Helen's marriage, regardless of the consequences, as a way to prevent future disputes. This oath bound many of the greatest Greek heroes to the cause, including Odysseus, Achilles, Ajax, and Diomedes. Soon, a massive Greek army and fleet assembled under Agamemnon's command, preparing for a long siege of Troy. The Greeks sailed to Troy, but upon arrival, they were met with the city's formidable walls, said to have been built by the gods Apollo and Poseidon. The city's defenders were led by Priam, the wise king of Troy, and his sons Hector, a noble and fierce warrior, and Paris, whose actions had set the war in motion. Despite their efforts, the Greeks could not easily breach Troy's defenses, and the war dragged on for 10 long years. The gods played an integral role in the Trojan War, each taking sides and directly influencing the events of the conflict. Hera and Athena, still angered by Paris's judgment, supported the Greeks, while Aphrodite, Apollo, and Ares favored the Trojans. Zeus, the king of the gods, attempted to remain neutral, but often found himself swayed by the pleas and interventions of the other deities. This divine involvement added a layer of complexity to the war, as battles on Earth were influenced by struggles in the heavens. The gods and goddesses of Mount Olympus were invited to celebrate the wedding of the mortal hero Peleus and the sea nymph Thetis, a divine couple destined to give birth to the great hero Achilles. The wedding was held with grand festivities, and all the gods and goddesses attended, bringing blessings and gifts. However, Eris, the goddess of strife and discord, was not invited. Known for causing trouble, her presence was deemed inappropriate at such a joyous event. Angered by her exclusion, Eris devised a plan to disrupt the celebration. She created a beautiful golden apple, inscribed with the words, "To Callisti," to the fairest or for the most beautiful. At the height of the festivities, Eris threw the apple into the midst of the gathered goddesses, sparking confusion and immediate rivalry. 3 goddesses in particular, Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, claimed the apple as their own, each believing she was the fairest. The sudden appearance of the apple led to an intense dispute. Hera, the queen of the gods, argued that as the wife of Zeus and the most powerful of the goddesses, she was entitled to the apple. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, contended that her intelligence and strategic mind made her the most deserving. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, believed her unparalleled physical beauty guaranteed her claim to the apple. Unable to reach a decision among themselves, The three goddesses turned to Zeus, the king of the gods, to judge who should receive the golden apple. Zeus, however, was reluctant to make a decision that could upset any of the goddesses, all of whom were important to him and held significant sway over different aspects of life. To avoid the conflict, Zeus decided to delegate the decision to a mortal, Paris, a prince of Troy. Paris, Prince of Troy, Paris, though a prince of the powerful city of Troy, had been raised as a shepherd, unaware of his royal heritage. His father, King Priam, had been warned by a prophecy that Paris would bring about the destruction of Troy, so Paris had been sent away as a child. Paris grew up handsome and fair, and he was known for his good judgment. This made him the perfect candidate for Zeus to entrust with the difficult decision of awarding the golden apple. Hermes, the messenger god, was sent to Paris with the three goddesses. Each of them, eager to win the golden apple, sought to sway Paris by offering him enticing gifts and bribes. This moment became known as the Judgment of Paris. The bribes of the goddesses. Each goddess approached Paris in turn, offering him a reward if he chose her as the fairest. Hera, the goddess of marriage and family, promised Paris vast power. She offered to make him the ruler of all Asia and Europe, ensuring him wealth and dominion over the known world. Hera's bribe played on ambition, offering Paris political power and the ability to conquer. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, offered Paris unmatched intelligence, military prowess, and success in battle. She promised to make him an unbeatable warrior and a wise leader who would gain glory through his tactical genius in war. Athena's offer appealed to Paris's desire for honor and greatness. Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, offered Paris the most tempting gift of all, the love of Helen, the most beautiful mortal woman in the world. Helen, however, was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. Nevertheless, Aphrodite promised that Helen would leave her husband and fall deeply in love with Paris. The Judgment of Paris is one of the most iconic tales from Greek mythology, tied deeply to the causes of the Trojan War. It all begins with a wedding, specifically the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, the parents of the Greek hero Achilles. All the gods and goddesses were invited to this grand event except for one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Furious about the snub, Eris decided to cause trouble. She threw a golden apple into the gathering, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest," sparking the contention that would ultimately lead to the Trojan War. Three goddesses claimed the apple: Hera, the queen of the gods, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Unable to settle the matter amongst themselves, they turned to Zeus, the king of the gods, to make the decision. Zeus, unwilling to offend any of the powerful goddesses, chose not to judge the contest himself. Instead, he delegated the task to a mortal, Paris, a prince of Troy. Paris was living a relatively simple life as a shepherd at the time, unaware of his royal lineage. Zeus dispatched Hermes, the messenger god, to bring the three goddesses to Paris. Each goddess attempted to sway his decision by offering him lavish rewards in exchange for choosing her as the fairest. Hera promised Paris power and dominion over all of Asia. Athena offered him unparalleled wisdom and skill in battle. Aphrodite, however, offered him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, captivated by Aphrodite's offer, chose her as the fairest of the three. As a result, he received the affection of Helen, who was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. Paris's decision set in motion the events that would lead to the infamous Trojan War, as Helen's abduction or elopement to Troy triggered Menelaus and his brother Agamemnon to rally the Greek forces and lay siege to Troy. The significance of the Judgment of Paris goes beyond the immediate consequences. It highlights the tension and rivalry among the gods and goddesses who often used mortals as pawns in their conflicts. In this instance, Paris became the instrument of a divine quarrel, which led to immense human suffering and the fall of a great city. The myth also illustrates the theme of temptation and the far-reaching consequences of human choices. Paris's decision to choose beauty and love over power and wisdom had profound implications not only for himself, but also for his family, city, and civilization. His act of choosing Aphrodite seemed selfish and short-sighted, prioritizing personal desires over broader responsibilities. In addition to its moral and philosophical themes, The judgment of Paris has been a rich subject for art and literature throughout the centuries. It has inspired countless paintings, poems, and plays, each focusing on different aspects of the story: the beauty of the goddesses, the dilemma of Paris, or the destructive consequences of his choice. Artists have often portrayed the moment of judgment as a scene of profound beauty and tension. The myth can also be interpreted as a reflection of ancient Greek values. It emphasizes the importance of reputation, honor, and beauty, and it shows how the divine could directly influence the fate of humans. The gods in Greek mythology were far from detached observers. They were actively involved in human affairs, often blurring the line between the mortal and divine realms. Ultimately, the judgment of Paris serves as a powerful reminder of the complexity of choices, the influence of divine powers in myth, and the unpredictable consequences that can stem from seemingly small actions. It remains one of the most enduring and fascinating tales from Greek mythology, embodying both the allure and the peril of human desires. The Judgment of Paris is one of the most iconic tales from Greek mythology, tied deeply to the causes of the Trojan War. It all begins with a wedding, specifically the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, the parents of the Greek hero Achilles. All the gods and goddesses were invited to this grand event, except for one, Eris, the goddess of discord. Furious about the snub, Eris decided to cause trouble. She threw a golden apple into the gathering, inscribed with the words, "To the fairest," sparking the contention that would ultimately lead to the Trojan War. 3 goddesses claimed the apple: Hera, the queen of the gods; Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war; and Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Unable to settle the matter amongst themselves, they turned to Zeus, the king of the gods, to make the decision. Zeus, unwilling to offend any of the powerful goddesses, chose not to judge the contest himself. Instead, he delegated the task to a mortal, Paris, a prince of Troy. Paris was living a relatively simple life as a shepherd at the time, unaware of his royal lineage. Zeus dispatched Hermes, the messenger god, to bring the 3 goddesses to Paris. Each goddess attempted to sway his decision by offering him lavish rewards in exchange for choosing her as the fairest. Hera promised Paris power and dominion over all of Asia. Athena offered him unparalleled wisdom and skill in battle. Aphrodite, however, offered him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris, captivated by Aphrodite's offer, chose her as the fairest of the 3. As a result, he received the affection of Helen, who was already married to King Menelaus of Sparta. Paris's decision set in motion the events that would lead to the infamous Trojan War, as Helen's abduction or elopement to Troy triggered Menelaus and his brother Agamemnon to rally the Greek forces and lay siege to Troy. The significance of the judgment of Paris goes beyond the immediate consequences. It highlights the tension and rivalry among the gods and goddesses, who often used mortals as pawns in their conflicts. In this instance, Paris became the instrument of a divine quarrel, which led to immense human suffering and the fall of a great city. The myth also illustrates the theme of temptation and the far-reaching consequences of human choices. Paris's decision to choose beauty and love over power and wisdom had profound implications not only for himself, but also for his family, city, and civilization. His act of choosing Aphrodite seemed selfish and short-sighted, prioritizing personal desires over broader responsibilities. In addition to its moral and philosophical themes, the judgment of Paris has been a rich subject for art and literature throughout the centuries. It has inspired countless paintings, poems, and plays, each focusing on different aspects of the story: the beauty of the goddesses, the dilemma of Paris, or the destructive consequences of his choice. Artists have often portrayed the moment of judgment as a scene of profound beauty and tension. The myth can also be interpreted as a reflection of ancient Greek values. It emphasizes the importance of reputation, honor, and beauty, and it shows how the divine could directly influence the fate of humans. The gods in Greek mythology were far from detached observers. They were actively involved in human affairs, often blurring the line between the mortal and divine realms. Ultimately, the judgment of Paris serves as a powerful reminder of the complexity of choices, the influence of divine powers in myth, and the unpredictable consequences that can stem from seemingly small actions. It remains one of the most enduring and fascinating tales from Greek mythology, embodying both the allure and the peril of human desires. In Greek mythology, one of the most famous instances of bribery is the judgment of Paris, an event that eventually led to the Trojan War. It begins at the wedding feast of Peleus and Thetis, where all the gods were invited, except for Eris, the goddess of discord. Furious at being excluded, Eris crashed the event and threw a golden apple among the guests with the inscription, "To the fairest." This sparked a rivalry between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, as each claimed to be the fairest and deserving of the apple. Unable to settle the matter, the goddesses sought the judgment of Paris, a mortal prince of Troy. Zeus, not wanting to get involved in such a delicate decision, appointed Paris as the judge. Each goddess then tried to sway Paris by offering bribes, appealing to different aspects of human desire: power, wisdom, and love. Hera, the queen of the gods and wife of Zeus, offered Paris immense political power, specifically promising him dominion over all of Asia. This bribe meant that Paris would become the ruler of vast lands and be the most powerful king in the known world, a tempting offer for any mortal prince seeking authority and influence. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, made a different appeal, offering Paris wisdom and victory in battle. In exchange for the golden apple, she would make Paris the most skilled warrior and the wisest leader, ensuring that he would always triumph in combat and be revered for his intelligence. Her offer was not only one of military prowess, but also of strategic acumen, making Paris an unbeatable force in war, and respected by all for his intellect. Finally, Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty, made what would be the most enticing offer to Paris: the love of Helen of Sparta, the most beautiful woman in the world. Helen, however, was already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta, but Aphrodite promised to make Helen fall in love with Paris if he declared her the fairest. Paris, tempted by the promise of love and beauty, chose Aphrodite as the winner, thus securing Helen's affection and setting the stage for the events that would lead to the Trojan War. Paris's choice to accept Aphrodite's bribe had monumental consequences. His abduction or seduction of Helen sparked outrage in Greece, leading her husband Menelaus to gather the greatest Greek warriors, including Achilles, Odysseus, and Agamemnon, to wage war on Troy. This conflict, known as the Trojan War, lasted 10 years and resulted in immense suffering and loss on both sides. Paris's decision in the judgment of Paris, driven by personal desire, demonstrates how bribery in mythology often leads to disaster, altering the fates of individuals and nations alike. The myth of Paris chooses Aphrodite centers on the judgment of Paris, a pivotal event in Greek mythology. During the wedding of Peleus and Thetis, the goddess Eris, angered by not being invited, threw a golden apple inscribed with "For the fairest" among the goddesses. This sparked a rivalry between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite, who each claimed the title of the fairest. To resolve the dispute, Zeus appointed Paris, the prince of Troy, to judge which goddess deserved the apple. Each goddess offered Paris a tempting reward. Hera promised him supreme power and rulership over all of Europe and Asia. Athena offered wisdom and unparalleled skill in battle, making him an invincible warrior. Aphrodite, however, promised him the love of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. Swayed by Aphrodite's offer of love and beauty, Paris awarded her the golden apple, marking her as the fairest. By choosing Aphrodite, Paris set in motion a series of events that led to the Trojan War. Helen, already married to Menelaus, the king of Sparta, was taken to Troy, igniting a war between the Greeks and the Trojans. The myth highlights the power of desire and beauty, as well as the devastating consequences that can result from seemingly simple choices. Helen of Sparta, later known as Helen of Troy, was famed for her extraordinary beauty and played a pivotal role in Greek mythology, particularly in the events leading to the Trojan War. She was the daughter of Zeus, the king of the gods, and Leda, the queen of Sparta. Her beauty attracted numerous suitors from all over Greece, leading her stepfather, King Tyndareus, to organize a pact among them to defend the chosen husband against any future disputes. Eventually, she married Menelaus, a prince who later became king of Sparta. The most famous episode of Helen's life occurred when Paris, prince of Troy, either abducted or seduced her, an event that sparked the Trojan War. According to myth, the goddess Aphrodite promised Helen to Paris as a reward for choosing her as the fairest goddess during the judgment of Paris. Helen's departure from Sparta, whether voluntary or not, enraged Menelaus, who called upon the Greek kings to honor their pact, leading to the siege of Troy. Helen's presence in Troy is depicted in different lights. In some versions of the story, she regrets her actions, while in others, she seems content with Paris. After the fall of Troy, Helen was reunited with Menelaus, and they returned to Sparta, where they lived out their later years in relative peace. Despite her role in triggering one of the most legendary wars in mythology, Helen remained a symbol of beauty and its power, her story enduring as a tale of love, desire, and the devastating consequences they can bring. Paris's journey to Sparta is one of the key moments in the myth leading up to the Trojan War. As the story goes, Paris, a prince of Troy and son of King Priam, was chosen by Zeus to judge a divine beauty contest between the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Each goddess offered him a bribe. Hera promised him power, Athena offered wisdom and victory in battle, and Aphrodite promised him the love of the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Paris awarded the prize, a golden apple, to Aphrodite, sealing his fate and setting in motion the events that would lead him to Sparta. With Aphrodite's promise in mind, Paris traveled to Sparta under the guise of a diplomatic mission. King Menelaus welcomed him into his palace as a guest, honoring the sacred laws of hospitality. While there, Paris met Helen, Menelaus's wife, who was considered the most beautiful woman in the world. Whether through Aphrodite's influence or mutual attraction, Helen eventually left with Paris, either willingly eloping or being abducted while Menelaus was away. This act of betrayal marked a significant breach of the ancient Greek custom of xenia, or guest friendship, which held hospitality as a sacred duty. Paris's departure from Sparta with Helen set off a chain of events that led directly to the Trojan War. When Menelaus discovered that Helen was gone, he called upon the other Greek kings, reminding them of the oath they had sworn to protect Helen's marriage. Led by Menelaus's brother Agamemnon, the Greeks united their forces to sail to Troy and retrieve Helen, resulting in a decade-long siege that culminated in the destruction of Troy. Paris's journey to Sparta, driven by the will of the gods, became one of the most infamous acts of betrayal in mythological history. Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Greek forces in the Trojan War, was destined for both glory and tragedy from the moment of his birth. As the son of the sea goddess Thetis and the mortal king Peleus, Achilles was partly divine. To protect him, his mother dipped him in the river Styx, making his body invulnerable, except for the heel where she held him. This small vulnerability would later become his undoing. Despite this, Achilles was a nearly unbeatable force in battle, feared by his enemies and respected by his fellow warriors. However, it was also prophesied that Achilles would live a short but glorious life if he fought at Troy, a fate he eventually accepted. His anger toward Agamemnon, the Greek leader, after being slighted over a war prize, led him to withdraw from battle, which caused a significant setback for the Greeks. The tide of the war only turned when Achilles' close friend, Patroclus, was killed by the Trojan prince Hector while wearing Achilles' armor. Overcome with grief and rage, Achilles returned to the battlefield to seek revenge, killing Hector in a fateful duel and dragging his body around the walls of Troy. This act cemented Achilles' status as the mightiest warrior, but also drew him closer to his prophesied doom. Achilles' fate was ultimately sealed when he returned to battle. Though he exacted revenge on Hector and brought devastation to the Trojans, his own death soon followed. According to myth, Paris, with the assistance of the god Apollo, shot an arrow that struck Achilles in his only vulnerable spot, his heel. This wound led to his death, marking the end of his short, heroic life. Achilles' death, though tragic, fulfilled the prophecy that he would die young but live on in eternal glory. His name forever remembered as the greatest hero of the Trojan War. Paris, the prince of Troy, travels to Sparta in one of the most famous stories of Greek mythology, primarily recounted in the Iliad and the Odyssey. The journey takes place after Paris is chosen by the goddesses Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite to judge who among them is the fairest. Aphrodite promises Paris the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen, as his reward. Thus, Paris sets off for Sparta, where Helen, the wife of King Menelaus, resides. The decision to travel to Sparta is driven by divine influence and marks the beginning of a chain of events that would lead to the Trojan War. Upon his arrival in Sparta, Paris is warmly welcomed by Menelaus, who hosts him with all the traditional courtesies of Greek hospitality, known as xenia. During Paris's stay, Menelaus is called away to Crete, leaving his wife Helen behind. Whether through Aphrodite's divine intervention or mutual attraction, Helen falls in love with Paris. the two decide to flee Sparta together, and Paris abducts Helen, taking her back to Troy. This act of betrayal not only violates the sacred bond of Xenia, but also ignites the wrath of Menelaus, leading him to seek revenge. The abduction of Helen by Paris triggers the Trojan War, as Menelaus calls upon his brother Agamemnon and other Greek kings to fulfill their oaths to defend Helen's marriage. The journey to Sparta, seemingly a romantic quest, becomes the catalyst for one of the most significant conflicts in ancient mythology. Paris's fateful decision not only brings suffering to both Troy and Greece, but also elevates Helen's beauty into a symbol of discord and war. Menelaus's fury is ignited when he returns from Crete to find that Paris, the prince of Troy, has betrayed his hospitality and abducted his wife Helen. This act not only wounds Menelaus personally, but also deeply insults the sacred Greek custom of xenia, the laws of guest friendship that obligate hosts and guests to treat each other with respect and honor. Menelaus's anger is further fueled by the humiliation of losing his wife to another man, especially someone who had been welcomed as a guest in his home. This dishonor strikes at the core of his pride as a king and husband, motivating him to seek immediate retribution. Determined to recover Helen and restore his honor, Menelaus turns to his brother, Agamemnon, the king of Mycenae, for support. Together, they invoke the oath taken by the many suitors of Helen, who had all pledged to defend her marriage when they competed for her hand. This oath becomes the foundation for assembling a massive Greek army to sail to Troy and demand Helen's return. Menelaus's fury is not just a personal vendetta, it becomes a national call to arms, uniting the Greek kings in a shared cause to punish the Trojans for violating the bonds of hospitality and to uphold the honor of their kingdoms. Menelaus's rage propels the Greeks into a 10-year siege of Troy, marking the beginning of the Trojan War. His desire for revenge drives much of the narrative, as he relentlessly pursues Paris and challenges him to single combat during the war. Although Menelaus eventually defeats Paris in battle, the intervention of the gods prevents a final resolution. His fury, however, is emblematic of the larger themes of honor, loyalty, and the consequences of betrayal that permeate the epic, showcasing how personal anger can lead to vast, catastrophic consequences in the ancient world. The ending of the Trojan War is marked by one of the most famous acts of cunning in ancient mythology, the construction and use of the Trojan Horse. After 10 grueling years of siege, the Greeks were unable to breach the mighty walls of Troy. Despite numerous battles and heroic feats on both sides, the stalemate continued. Desperate for victory, Odysseus, known for his cleverness, devised a brilliant plan. The Greeks constructed a giant wooden horse, hollowed out to hide a group of elite warriors inside. They then pretended to abandon the siege, burning their camp and sailing away, leaving the horse behind as a supposed offering to the gods, especially to Athena, hoping to secure safe passage home. The Trojans, believing they had finally won the war, debated whether to bring the horse into their city. Despite the warnings of the Trojan priest Laocoon, who famously declared, "Beware of Greeks bearing gifts," the Trojans ultimately decided to bring the horse inside the walls as a symbol of their triumph. Laocoon's warning was reinforced when he and his sons were mysteriously killed by serpents, a sign the Trojans interpreted as divine approval of the horse. The Trojans celebrated their perceived victory with feasts and rejoicing, convinced that the long and brutal war had ended. That night, however, as the Trojans slept, the hidden Greek soldiers inside the horse, led by Odysseus, emerged and silently opened the city gates. Meanwhile, the Greek army, which had secretly returned under cover of darkness, was waiting just outside the city. The Greeks poured into Troy, launching a surprise attack on the unsuspecting Trojans. Chaos and destruction erupted as the Greeks slaughtered the Trojans, set fire to their homes, and looted the city's treasures. King Priam was brutally killed at the altar of Zeus by Neoptolemus, the son of Achilles, while Queen Hecuba and other Trojan women were captured and enslaved. The once mighty city of Troy was reduced to ruins, its people either killed or taken captive. Among the notable fates was that of Hector's young son, Astyanax, who was thrown from the city walls to prevent any future threat from the royal line. Aeneas, one of the few Trojan heroes to survive, fled the burning city with a small group of followers, an event which later formed the foundation of Roman mythology, as recounted in Virgil's Aeneid. With Troy destroyed, the Greeks emerged victorious, but paid a heavy price for their victory. The long war had taken its toll, and the aftermath was far from peaceful. Many of the Greek heroes faced tragic fates on their journeys home. Agamemnon, the leader of the Greek forces, returned only to be murdered by his wife Clytemnestra. Odysseus, who had played a crucial role in the Greek success, faced years of perilous wandering before finally returning home in the Odyssey. Thus, while the war ended with the fall of Troy, its consequences rippled through Greek mythology for years to come, shaping the fates of both the victors and the vanquished.